welcome you guys to another Gathering Update Zoom, where we help you prepare for the 2025 LCMS Youth Gathering in New Orleans. We'll be walking alongside you as you prepare your group to attend Endure in July. As a reminder, we will continue to host Gathering Update Zooms leading all the way up until the gathering. On the second Thursday of each month, we'll have 30 minutes of information, and then we'll have 30 minutes where we stop the recording and we have office hours where you can ask questions about the gathering planning process and maybe some questions that aren't affiliated with whatever we're talking about that evening. In case you have to miss a month or you just want to share with your adult leaders, we do post these recordings on the Gathering YouTube page and the LCMS Youth Ministry Facebook group and the Gathering website. So if you haven't checked those out, make sure that you check those out. I will get you the link to the October one if you missed that one in the chat. So you can check that out and stay up to date with all of the gathering planning stuff that is going on right now. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your evening to prepare for the gathering as we talk about a really important piece of the gathering planning, and that's congregational support. My name is Meredith Smith. If we haven't met, I'm here with DCE Juliana Schultz. I know I saw a lot of names on the list and I was like, oh man, I haven't seen these names.
I know, it's fantastic.
Welcome to Gathering Planning if you're new to our Gathering Update Zooms. Before we get started on our topic tonight, let's go over a number of updates and reminders for you guys.
Yes, please. So we are so excited to see the number of registrations that have come in the mail. We even have like a pile that if we have time, we will show you guys some of the amazing artwork you guys have done. It's been so cool to see the decorations, to have names to put to all of the different groups that are registering. And if you don't have your registration in, please know that there's still plenty of time. Even if you did get yours in,
Yes.
and you have a kid who came in and said, hey, we still want to go, there is still plenty of time. The gathering registration won't close until May the 29th. You still have all the way until March before we have another rise in the registration cost. So please continue to encourage young people to join your congregation in attending the gathering. Right. A few notes from our registration folks. They're here to answer questions, and we'll give you an opportunity to do that here in a minute. But if you want to make sure that you, hold on, I totally lost my spot. I apologize, you guys. We want you to wait until your initial group shows that you are accepted in the registration program before you start to add participants. So if you have new people, like you sent it in and the next day, this is always how it happens. And the next day somebody comes in and they said, hey, we want to do this. Please just make sure that your original group is accepted, and then you're going to be able to add more people to your account. You're going to be able to print off the right paperwork, send in that one as well. And then know that our office is still working really hard to make sure that we're processing all of the documentation that you guys sent to us. Give us a little time. There's quite a few of you.
Yes.
Right. So please be kind to Becky and Emily, the rest of our staff, as they process that. And by the end of the month, you guys should be able to go ahead and to see that. Some of it's up already, but please be patient with us as we go through all of those things.
Yeah, and thank you guys so much for working hard to get that November 1st deadline and getting all your paperwork and checks together. It's made our registration process a lot smoother when you guys, follow the directions that we give.
Right. And certainly we have talked a lot about registration. So if you still have questions, we encourage you to go visit the Gathering website, review all the resources. You can go to the YouTube playlist. You can go back and listen to September and October's gathering updates, our podcast episode. We got lots of ways that you can be here, and we are always here to answer your questions as well.
Absolutely. And while there's a lot of time left to register your additional people for the gathering, one thing there is not a lot of time on is the young adult volunteer application. Our young adults ages 19 to 25 have about a month and a half left to apply to submit their application to serve as a YAB at the gathering. The application closes December 31st. So we know there's a large number of young adults who are going to be home for Thanksgiving break and then Christmas break. So if you have time to connect with them as they're coming back from campuses or jobs, connect with these young adults and encourage them to submit their YAB application. Our team, we were just in New Orleans and we were talking with them. They have the goal of
Fantastic.
1,000 young adult volunteer
I think we can do it.
applications. Yeah, I always think the final push is right where we need to be. So we're just over 600 applications. So if you have a young adult who's on the fence about serving, but maybe isn't sure what their summer plans are, or their summer job, or working at camp, encourage them to submit their application. GAVs don't have to pay the registration fee until they get accepted in the spring. So there's no reason to not apply. You can always
Right.
cancel that if something else comes up. But once the application closes on December 31st, we can't open it again. So it is kind of important to get that in, and you can always make changes later if your plans change or their plans change. And you need to do that. And this is also a really good reminder that if you do have young adults coming from your congregation that are considering serving as a YAB, or maybe have already applied to be a YAB, include them in your gathering planning, your Bible studies, your fundraisers, your travel plans, and help them alleviate some of that cost, because those YABs do have to pay a registration fee as well.
They do. So getting YAB applications in, key thing. Here's the other group of people we want you to be connecting with, and those are your district coordinators. Every district has a coordinator, and if you don't, then we have some other people you can connect with. But those district coordinators provide a whole lot of information about the gathering. We've done some special training with them. They're up to date. They understand everything from the registration process to stuff that's going to happen at the gathering. And they're great. So especially if you're a first-time leader, you've never done this before, your district coordinator is a great person to reach out to. They can walk you through a lot of the details of this, just to help you, comfort you, make sure that you know you're doing what you're doing, right, to help give you some good suggestions along the way. They can do a lot of things, including connecting you with other congregations in your area. So if you're a small group, you want to travel with some other groups,
Yeah.
they might be able to help you with that. They're going to know who else is from your district is going to be attending. Some districts, a couple of them, are even helping to coordinate some of that transportation.
It was fun seeing all these envelopes of all the different churches that are like
Yeah.
pairing up together. We even have churches from different states pairing up together. So if you haven't sent in your registration in and you're looking for another congregation, connect with your district coordinator.
Yeah, and some of them are starting to put out their information for their district events, right? Which is fantastic. It's an opportunity for you to kind of be able to meet some of the young people and adults in your particular district. And so you'll be able to go and connect with them as those events start to populate. We're going to start to put them on the website, but you also might hear about them in your district's communications and some other places. So if you haven't heard anything, you can always reach out to your district. And so we want to make sure that you're connecting to those as well. Sometimes they're before, sometimes they're parts during, and sometimes they're after the gathering.
And a lot of them include meals.
Meals, cool like events around New Orleans.
Yeah, t-shirts.
Yes, so many cool things. We are really grateful for our district coordinators and how hard they work to help support you and the gathering. So be sure to utilize them as a resource.
And finally, we've added a few new items to the gathering store that are perfect for winter. I've got mine on right now. So if you haven't, if you're thinking about winter, if it gets winter where you live, or if you're thinking the air conditioning really does work in New Orleans, you might want some of these long sleeves or crew necks or hoodies. Just make sure you're checking out the gathering store and grab some of that exclusive indoor gear before the gathering. A lot of people, I've seen some people on Facebook posting that they got all the group a shirt, which always looks really cool. So
Yeah.
make sure you're shopping the gathering store. We'll put the link in the chat so you guys can prepare and look really cool at the gathering and before the gathering.
I got the crew neck. I've been wearing it nonstop at home.
I was wearing it earlier.
Yeah. Very comfy. So just in case you were curious, if that makes a difference to you guys. Great stuff in the store area. All right, so that's kind of it for announcements things tonight. Tonight our topic's going to focus around a new resource that we just dropped on the website called Connecting and Thanking Your Congregation Before, During, and After the Gathering. Because here's the reality. No group comes to the gathering without being connected to a supporting group, particularly your congregation back home.
Yeah, we understand that the gathering doesn't happen without the support of your whole congregation, your pastors, your other leaders, and your members. whether they support your young people with time, money, encouragement, or prayer. We know congregations are excited for you and your young people to attend the gathering. It's important that you include them in your gathering experience, even if they're not there. And it fosters that connection with your group and the greater congregation to not only build relationships, but to also encourage ongoing support for your youth ministry.
Right? Because this is a great opportunity for you to kind of build
Yes.
those connections and that support around what's not just happening at the gathering, but what's happening in all of what you do with your young people. So we're going to start with the before the gathering, which is where you guys are right now.
You are here.
We are certainly before the gathering here. And some great places for you to be able to connect. And one of those is to be able to share gathering resources with key leaders, particularly people like your pastor, church leaders or parishioners, right? So for example, you might say, we have a day in the life of the gathering, right? Or why the gathering videos that are both available on our YouTube channel. Those are great ones for you to be able to share with folks, to play maybe before Bible study or at your board of directors meetings, to be able to help those adults around you understand the importance of what's happening at the gathering, and kind of when you talk about bringing kids to the LCMS Youth Gathering, like what does that mean?
Yeah.
What do we do there, right? To be able to kind of support that. And there's also other places that you can pull out resources. So helping to share pieces from the thematic paper or the pre-event Bible studies that are going to be able to help you to connect not just to what the programming looks like at the gathering, but the theme as well, and helping not just your young people, but everyone in your congregation to be thinking about the theme of the gathering of Endure.
And one of the more obvious ways, I guess, to include your congregation in your gathering planning is to invite your members to assist you guys in your fundraising efforts. We've talked about fundraising a number of times on these update Zooms, but this is a great way to connect families and church members to your youth ministry. Maybe if your youth has a dedicated space, either a table, or I know my church has a bulletin board for all their youth ministry stuff, you can start beginning sharing those preparations or displaying the fundraising information just to get people invited and excited. This dedicated space is a really great place to introduce all the youth and adults attending with your church. I think on Facebook, our church usually does, they take pictures of all the kids and they post it up so you know kind of who's going. Like some of you guys posted all your pictures on your registration envelopes. So
It was so good.
Getting to see all the faces that are going to the gathering and celebrate what happens at the gathering before and after. This space is really helpful if you need some volunteer needs, pictures from your fundraisers to follow up and thank the people that have helped support you guys. You can put important gathering information and other ways that your congregation can support your young people leading up to the gathering.
Yeah. And so Meredith's going to throw a question in the chat. And I'd be curious, especially those of you that are experienced leaders, what are some ways that you found to be the best ways to connect your congregation to the gathering using fundraisers, right? So if I had to do fundraisers, what are some great fundraisers or things to include in fundraisers that might connect your congregation to the gathering? I know one of the things that we would do is do a silent auction, and we would auction off a lot of things, but we'd also auction off service work with our young people. So somebody who could do babysitting or technology or mowing the lawn. And that was a great way for us to be able to share some of the gifts that were part of our group with some people that they would not have normally been connected to, which is really great. Some other ways that you can connect them to other adults in the congregation is to ask if there are adults who are willing to be prayer partners for that young person. Somebody who is able to, you can give them a name, maybe you give them a little information about that person, what grade they're in, or some interest they might have. But certainly asking them to pray for that young person right now for what they're experiencing as a part of your congregation, but also praying for what that experience will be like at the gathering and how God will use the time in his word and with each other together at the gathering to benefit that young person's faith life, right? So this is a great thing to start now, and you can carry it all the way through the gathering and beyond. So something to be able to think about. We've even heard of congregations that use that prayer partner and have that prayer partner send a card or a note
Mm.
to the young person while they're at the gathering, or a little thank you gift. So, and then you can have that student also write back to their prayer partner, right? And have
Yeah.
that back and forth communication. I'm gonna look, did we get any good fundraiser ideas here?
Use stock exchange.
Yeah. More option, right? There we go. So yeah, keep dropping those ideas in the chat, right? We want to make sure the youth are the ones doing the fund, right? It's great to have the youth be the ones that are out in front of that
Yeah.
fundraiser, whatever it is, so that people are able to put a face and a name to those kinds of things, right? We're also gonna have some specific resources that are gonna come out next. They're gonna be about connecting parents to the gathering. So you might be hearing like us talk about congregation. We will talk specifically about how to connect parents to the gathering, but you also might want to have parents write some of those notes of encouragement
Oh,
to
yeah.
their young
That'd be
people
great.
as well. And then know that right before the gathering, right, we're gonna have a commissioning service that your congregation can do together with your gathering participants prior to them leaving for New Orleans. So that's something else that you can have in the back of your mind. Maybe start even now talking to pastor or other leaders about how you might encourage something like a commissioning service that would happen. Maybe it happens after your last meeting or right before the gathering.
And lastly, don't forget to utilize your congregation's social media accounts to share gathering resources and other information about your fundraisers and what your youth ministry is up to. Social media is a really great way to recruit youth, recruit your adult leaders if you're still looking for them, and recruit those prayer partners that we talked about. But it's also a great way to share your group's gathering experience before, during, and after the gathering. So, Juliana, those are just a few
I'm
options.
seeing it. I would pick up a few of these notes that I'm seeing in the chat. I love this idea of doing a prayer itinerary so that like adults can be praying for something specific every day. And having that widely distributed, that's really cool. Or I love a good restaurant fundraiser. You know,
Me too.
if I need an excuse to go to a restaurant, that's not a hard sell for me. But being able to have youth come that night and be able to walk kind of
Yeah.
on tables, you might want to have to identify so they don't walk up to a stranger table, right? But
Like
like,
to wear the gathering shirts.
right, there you go,
Gathering
then you're gonna know those things, right? So there's just some fantastic ways to do that. So all great ways to connect with your congregation before the gathering. Let's talk a little bit about how you might connect with them while you're down in New Orleans. There's lots of things that happen during the gathering, right? It can get a little bit overwhelming, I know. And so it's good for us to be thinking about ahead of time, how am I gonna actually connect to my congregation while we're down learning and experiencing what's gonna happen at the gathering.
Great. And one of the easiest ways to connect with your congregation back home is to encourage them to tune into the live stream of stadium events each night and then closing worship on the final morning. The live stream, along with a number of gathering resources, will all be available on the gathering website. You might even encourage the members of your congregation to gather together to watch a live stream. I always love seeing during the days of the gathering, the people that have watch parties, maybe with like the middle schoolers to get them excited about the next gathering. That's always really fun to see you guys creatively get people together to watch. And you might even encourage your members of to participate in that. Don't just watch. You can join us in praise, learning, reading the Bible studies that we'll post online, and pray along with your group from a distance. This is a great way to dig into our theme, endure, and to have those scriptural themes to discuss with your group when they return, not only just as your youth ministry, but as a congregation as a whole. So make sure that you equip those interested in tuning into the stadium events so they can watch without any kind of complications.
Yeah, so while you're at the gathering, it's good to take a chance and maybe connect with whoever is managing your congregation social media, right? To be able to have young people share what their experience is during the day of the gathering. So maybe if you have an Instagram or even a Facebook, you might with some very specific instructions, maybe, or scriptural, depending on what that young person is. But give them a chance to like, hey, show you guys walking down the streets and talking about what's happening at the gathering, or sharing about the sessions that they went to.
Yeah.
Or talking about what they saw on the interactive floor. Or maybe you just are specifically going to be taking some pictures and some quotes, and you're going to be able to put them up on your congregation social media. That's the way that information goes straight into the feeds of all the people in your congregation. So they're going to be able to go, like, oh, right, my young people are there. We're praying for them. And also it gives you a cool visual of like what's happening at the gathering. Because I know sometimes it can be hard to describe. Like, I know I have this even within my own family, right? Like I'm trying to talk about the things that I do, but it's when Meredith, like when we share it on social media, sometimes it helps make it a little more tangible for folks. Now, we want you to be able to make sure that you're using good protocols, making sure you're not taking pictures of other people or people who you don't have permission for, that you're not sharing personal information or those kinds of things. But also you can record things in advance, edit if you need, post them later, all of those things. So be safe about that, but it can be a really great way to connect with your congregation.
And if technology and social media is not your strong suit, there's no need to worry. You can encourage your members, like we mentioned earlier, to follow along with the gathering social media, where we'll be going live and we'll be showing pictures throughout the days of the gathering and giving viewers a unique look at all the different program areas of the gathering, including sessions, the interactive center, servant events, and even more special behind the scenes looks that we can't tell you about yet. You should also consider asking some of your youth to do some of your social media takeovers if you're not tech savvy or that is not your strong suit. I guarantee you there are some young people in your group that would be willing to take that over and do an awesome job at it. So if you have some young people who are trustworthy, have them post throughout the day on your accounts and share their experiences of the gathering.
Now, some of you, hopefully nobody's thinking too hard about the packing list.
No.
Right, just yet. I mean, maybe. But there certainly are things that you can consider, bringing things like stamps or even some postcards. You can get postcards all over New Orleans, but bring some other postcards, right? So that you're able to do maybe some thank you cards that young people can write in their downtime that you can send back to them, back to their parents for their support, all different kinds of things. So that really is a great tangible reminder and a thank you back to your congregation to do that. And certainly making sure that you have your congregation praying for you in your time at the gathering, prayer for your travel, prayer for your time together, prayer for your adults as they manage, prayer for the heat as you're down there, and all of those fantastic things. So we have come up with, those are just a few of the ways that our Delaire team came up with that you might connect during the gathering. If you have other ideas, right, we're going to ask if you want to drop those in the chat. How does your group connect with the congregations and families back home during the days of the gathering? I did see a question that popped up here. Vanessa's asking about, hey, she's got a group coming to the gathering. They're working really hard on their fundraising, but it kind of can feel like you're leaving your other young people out.
Sure.
Certainly we want to balance that, right? It's a really hard thing when you have not every young person in your group can come to the gathering, and especially if it's only a few that can't come. We do want to make sure that you are still spending some time as a group, that you're not doing the only things that you're doing are fundraisers. Hopefully the other things you're doing are helping support your other young people as well. But also invite them to be a part of that. There's no reason that they can't help support their friends as they fundraise for those things. So, certainly if they're willing to be a part of that, I would encourage you to invite them to come and help. It seems like something that they might not be willing to do, but like if they see other people having fun, they might want to be involved in those fundraisers.
Absolutely.
I don't know, that's just my 2 cents. Other people can chime in on their response if you guys have had that experience before. Like, what does that look for? All right, one more.
Now it's really hard to think about after the gathering right now. It's November. It's kind of hard to look past July right now. But you want to make a plan before you go into the gathering of how you're going to share your experience with your congregation shortly after you arrive home from the gathering. We'd recommend planning this even before you've left for New Orleans. It's our hope in the Youth Ministry Office that the gathering can serve as a catalyst to new ministry opportunities and spiritual growth long after the gathering. You might hear us say every once in a while the gathering is more than a 5-day experience. So this planning for after the gathering is really important. You know, we mentioned earlier about writing postcards while you're at the gathering. But after the event is over, consider writing those thank you notes to thank your congregation and everybody that helped supported you. And tell your gathering story of what you learned, what you experienced, and maybe publish it. Again, in that dedicated youth space, your bulletin boards, your displays, your church newsletter or emails, wherever it is appropriate for your congregation. And encourage your youth and adults to go beyond a thank you for your support, just a thank you, and share some of those impact moments that you guys witnessed or experienced at the gathering. It just makes it a little bit more heartfelt, gives a little bit of meat, right? And if your congregation, maybe your congregation uses video announcements, I always really love watching people's recap videos of the gathering. It's always really fun to see because we can't be everywhere at once. So it's fun to see how your group experiences the gathering. And we know that your congregation and everybody in it would love to see how your group has experienced the gathering. Maybe that's the place where you put your thank yous in those announcements.
Yeah, and one of the things I would do with my young people on our trips would be, everybody had to do at least one talking head, is what it's like office style, right? And I would have a set of like 3 or 4 questions that I would be willing to ask everybody. When they knew that if they had something really meaningful that happened to them or something they heard that they wanted to share, that's when they would jump in and be able to do that. And then we were able to use those in a lot of different ways. So it can be really helpful to give them some questions and some prompts. But tell them kind of like we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to share a little bit about their experience. Now, we know that a number of you are going to be helping serve at the gathering, and we want to encourage you to continue serving in your congregation as well. You can serve those people who helped make that trip possible. So thinking about doing some service work in your congregation when you come back. Maybe it's a great way for your group to continue to bond, a way for your group to continue to contribute to your congregation as a thank you for what you do. And keep in mind that service helps to continue to cultivate that relationship you have with your adult leaders and within that group. Because again, we want this to be more than 5 days. Hopefully the gathering is that place where you get to have that experience, but then also it helps move them into other kinds of fellowship and community building and service in their youth ministry. All right, we want to hear, if we haven't shared it, I didn't see any on what people do to connect with their congregation back home, but does anybody have a great way that they are sharing or connecting or thanking their congregation when they return, right? Or get great practice for when you return from the gathering. So if you have that, you can drop that in the chat. All right, that went so quickly, right? We are almost to the end of our time. So we have maybe just a couple of minutes if you have a question. If not, we're going to take just a minute break here in between now and open office hours, but we'll certainly be here for a while. Okay, so drop those questions in the chat. You can continue to drop them. Tell us more about next month's Zoom.
Yeah, so I just dropped the link in the chat to join us for the December Zoom, where we'll be wrapping up 2024 and then going into 2025 and what you guys can look forward to from our office and in the gathering planning process. But that's all we have time for right now. We're going to take a short break. We're going to stop the recording, and then we are going to come back for office hours where you guys can ask us any questions that you guys want about gathering planning process. So feel free to stick around, take a quick break, and we will join you guys for office hours.
We're really grateful for you and all the things that you do to prepare for the gathering. And we're grateful for all your congregations, and we hope that it's a blessing for them as well as they connect to your youth ministry and help send your young people to the gathering in July.
Thanks, everybody. We look forward to connecting with you.